Hello guys, this is Professor Otcat here. Welcome back. Yesterday was Children's Day for some Eastern European and Asian countries, and when Children's Day arrives, we'll think of some children's music. But is there any great children's music? Did the great composers have a close relationship with children? I'm afraid not. It seems that when you think of children at that time, you don't have this kind of mentality like children are like adults or thingy. But there are a few great musicians who had families, children, wives, and one of them was Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach had 20 children. Mozart had 6 and Schumann had 9. Do you think it would be easy for musicians to coordinate with their families? It doesn't seem so. If you want to start a career, let's say music, you may be in your 30s already. At that time, people's lifespan was around 50 years old, so there were very few famous musicians with families. I'm thinking of Schumann's Kinderszenen, Scenes from Childhood, Opus 15. This is very famous. But you might ask, when he wrote this piece, did he watch his children grow up very closely and clearly so he could imagine the appearance of children? No, I'm afraid not, because Schumann, he wrote this in 1838. He was 28 years old, but he wasn't married yet, even though his love story with Clara was very famous. But at that time, 1838, he had a quarrel with his future father-in-law, who didn't want his daughter to marry Schumann because he wanted his daughter to be a famous pianist instead of being a housewife. After almost 2 years, they finally got married, but Schumann has already written his Scenes from Childhood. So the whole opus was just based on fantasies. This piece is not written for children because the technique is too difficult for children and the content is also a bit too difficult to understand. Schumann later explained that the music was for adults thought of being kids after they grew up. For us, children represent simpleness in their hearts, that kind of simple innocence and loveliness. So we have to look at many things from the standpoint of a child. So when Schumann wrote these pieces, he wanted to keep them as simple as possible. It's simple for adults, but not for children. But although it is very simple, these pieces are only like 20 bars, very short, not very long pieces, but the content is very rich. The first one is called A Foreign Land and People. The topic is so big that it can be written in only a few bars. How is that even possible? But in fact, when we think of these strange countries romantically, many people thought of Asian countries because Asia can be said to be a comparison of Western culture. Everything is unknown, magical, and even romantic. So this theme has attracted Schumann's attention. The technique is not difficult, but it has certain difficulty because it's a accompaniment. It has some triplets in the middle. Both hands play triplets, so both thumbs are involved. You know, thumbs are very heavy and dull, so you have to keep the volume down. You can't be like this. This won't work. So the triplets are going to be played softly, but the bass is also a melody. main melody is on the right hand, so you have to use a little pushing force to pop out the main melody and play it more clearly. Opus 15, number 3, is Blind Man's Buff, meaning hide and seek. You remember playing hide and seek, right? Kids running around, finding other kids, seeing it as a tournament amongst each other. So the whole piece is going to be a little bit tense. This one can be considered as a good finger exercise because it has a lot of staccatos. Because of the speed, you can't use the strength of your arms. It would be too loud. Because you want to play is from forte to piano, from loud to soft. So you have to feel as if you're playing a harp or guitar. It's a good exercise. Then there's number 6, important event. You can also see it as an exercise. It's quite beautiful, to be honest. This is an octave exercise. There is a good way. You keep the note with the pedal, and then a staccato. Just like saving it up and then swipe it out. It's a bit hard, to be honest. Well, I feel a bit touched by the piece Child Falling Asleep. It makes you want to fall asleep, yes. And we feel a little drowsy because the left hand is like this. So if you think about it, it seems like you can't get around it. It's just swirling around. But the right hand is not like that. It's exactly opposite. The right hand seems to be you want to flying above the skies. Many people say that Rome was not built in a day, and such difficult things should be done slowly. We can only see and appreciate those great buildings, but when we look at them, we feel like we're very small and tiny. But when you talk about music, can you practice a piece of music in just one day? You probably can. Schumann's most famous piece, piano piece, Fantasie in C. Do you think you can practice this in one day? Probably. Because the technique is not very difficult. It means that you can build Rome in one day, because this piece is just so famous in the world, and you can play it. It means you're just voila, great. Well, great, that's all for today. If you like my channel, please accent the like button, follow my Instagram account, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. And I'll see you beautiful face next time. Bye!